They say take care of your body because it's the only place you have to live. This couldn't be a truer statement to start today's episode. I have to warn you, this subject matter may be slightly triggering, but it's something that needs to be had. While I was preparing for this episode, I came across some very disturbing statistics which showed that eating disorders are the third most common chronic illnesses amongst adolescents globally. And according to the WHO, around 15 million people worldwide have reported to have some form of eating disorder. Now, these figures alone just confirm the fact that we now more than ever need to have proper access to information and deeper conversations around eating disorders, fitness, obsessive nutrition, and overall health and well-being. To shed light to this matter, I've asked ZOIME's head of movement, Alex Booley, and medical director, Jenna Burton, to join me here today and unpack this topic and hopefully start an open dialogue to a illness that is typically very silent. Jenna, Alex, thank you so much for being here. I feel like me and I guess both of you, we've known each other for quite some time. I know exactly what you do and what you're all about. But obviously, for the people that are listening in today, can you give them a little bit of a background on what gets you up in the morning and do what you do?
On Alex.
Me first.
Yes.
Okay. So I am head of movement at ZOIME, and I've been a personal trainer for a very short period of time, but throughout my early childhood into teenage years, I've always been into sports, fitness, activity, and it's always been a massive part of my life. So for me, taking a route into personal training was always a natural route for me to take. And I'm now head of movement within this facility, doing what I love, training people, and it's what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I after obviously, we've spent a lot of time together, and I know that you have had an extensive sort of, I guess, your whole life has been around fitness and movement.
Absolutely.
And I think that you've really brought that into Zoe and, sort of made it your own, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do love it. And I try to put my own twist on stuff.
Yeah.
So I've got my own, the way I like to train, my experiences, especially being in competitive sports. And I love bringing that experience into my training to make it that little bit better, just that little bit more effective. Try and differentiate myself from a standard personal trainer into someone who's a little bit more specialist, a little bit more, okay, let me bring my experiences into, day-to-day training for people. So yeah, love it. Love
Brilliant.
what I do.
Jenna.
Well, I'm a medic.
Yes.
So obviously I've got a medical background, and my background mainly in the past was in emergency. But I just love people. Like, I really love people. I'm actually a bit obsessed with getting to know people, learning about them, see what makes them tick. And I think as my career's gone on, I've morphed more into kind of like, they say functional health, but I would say 360-degree health. So my tagline is look well, feel well, be well. And it's about taking someone and giving them that time in a consult to get to know them, find out what they eat, they drink, how they move, how they sleep, what's going on psychologically, and try and work with them more medium to longer term to get them to where they want to be and to reach their goals. So I kind of say a wellness medic. I've done PT qualifications, etc., because like Alex, I really believe in the benefits of movement. And I still have those like little days that I crave the emergency or the craziness of it. So in my spare time, rather than going out partying, I do some ringside medicine, but that's a hobby, I guess.
That's actually brilliant. You guys, on a completely side note, me and Jenna have actually known each other for a really long time.
Yeah.
We connected when our kids were playing football together.
Teddy soccer.
Shout out to Teddy Soccer. But it was it's actually so funny how it comes almost full circle, and now you're at Zoe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, then you know me personally as a mum, because I think when you're a mum, your whole perspective on people and on your job and your career changes. And I actually think it makes you better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Better at what you do.
Absolutely. And I feel like, again, from obviously my consultations with you and things like that, it was I think everything, when you're analyzing everything, you've taken everything in consideration, whether you are a parent, how long do you sleep, what do you eat if you're on, sort of on the go. And I feel like you bring that forward into whatever advice that you would give. It's sort of, you're looking at a person as a whole person, as opposed to small little bits and pieces that you need to fix?
I had to do it because I was running over on my consultations so badly.
Yeah.
When I was just allocated 15 to 30 minutes, I could never get anything done because I couldn't just say, oh, here you are. Okay, yeah, you've got this. Let's prescribe you a quick medication and get you out. People are so much deeper than that.
Absolutely.
So I have the luxury now of allocating people that little bit more time, at least the first time I meet them, to get to know them.
Yeah. Look, I've brought you both in. Obviously, I've asked you both to come and sort of join me today because I feel like what we're going to be talking about is a little bit of a minefield. And I feel it's an endless discussion. And I think this should be one of many. And I truly think that in this day and age, for some odd reason, I know it's not for some odd reason, but I think more so with the fact that we've got so much going on social media, that this topic has become not as discussed as it used to be. Or is that the wrong impression? Obviously, we're talking specifically about eating disorders and again, this hyperfixation on, health and wellness and where that's taking people. And is that really the case when you're sort of going through life trying to maintain optimal level of health? And it almost spirals, I think, because of obviously what we've got around us today and all the comparisons that we see. So I feel, again, I'm probably going to bring you guys in for a part 2, but at least for us to kind of touch on the topic and just kind of have it out there. At the end of the day, I'm a mother. Jenna, you're a mom. Alex, hopefully soon, at some point will be a dad.
Maybe.
But it's the fact that, these conversations should be had now with smaller children to be able to kind of open that conversation with them and have them recognize certain unhealthy behaviors and patterns. Mm-hmm. So I guess sort of to delve right in terms of eating disorders, obviously we kind of know that there is a overarching sort of big group of eating disorders, but how can you actually define the full spectrum of eating disorders?
Look, you said it used to be talked about more.
It was, I felt.
I think it was different. So you're talking about there's a wide spectrum. There really is. What we're talking about when we're talking about eating disorders, to go into the medical bit, is obsessive behaviour. And then it's on what level of the spectrum is that obsessive behaviour? Does it start to interfere with activities of daily living and then it becomes more serious? Years ago, 80s, 90s girls, mainly girls, because it was at that time, it was more about anorexia and bulimia. And to look at someone, it was more obvious. And I think why there was more of a discussion about it, because you could tell when somebody was rapidly losing weight, when they were trying to cover up their body with baggy clothing. Right. And it was just in your face almost. Nowadays, I think it's changed. There's something called orthorexia, which is obsessive with healthy eating. I talk a lot about trying to get protein in, maybe checking with apps. When that starts to become obsessive and people aren't able to go outside of their box of what they've been told by themselves, what they should have that day, that's when we're starting to get to unhealthy eating habits and behaviors. And it's not as obvious because these people look well. They look well, but it's psychologically what's going on that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot more to it as well. We obviously know about the main eating disorders that are out there, but so many of them also just hidden. They're so hidden, and it's not necessarily about what someone is eating. It's more about what they're doing outside of what they're eating. So the actions, their habits, the anxiety that's within them around food, or just in social situations where there may be a potential for a meal to be placed in front of them, and it's the psychological impact more so than that. And again, social media has done, social media is a great tool, fantastic tool if used correctly, but it's so big right now that so much misinformation is out there, and you can digest information from social media in so many different ways, and people will generally take that in how they perceive it. That's right. And if they haven't taken that information quite how maybe it was intended, that leads to a spiral, and then you may not see someone is suffering, but their actions, their habits over time may lead to something more detrimental, and it could lead to the point where it's too late to stop. So it's about recognizing certain habits, certain signs and stuff, the hidden ones that we don't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis. Over time, you might look at someone and say, you've been doing this for quite a while. Is everything okay? You know, and preventing something from getting too bad rather than...
Because it does go unrecognized a lot of the times until it gets to a point where that person's really at a really bad sort of position or a state. So why do you think that is the case? Is it because I don't know, it's something that, again, the conversation around it hasn't been properly addressed? Or is it that it's not as obvious as the anorexia and bulimia?
It's an emerging condition, isn't it? So if you've got somebody that is functioning well and they're actually eating really well for the body, they're fueling themselves almost perfectly, as it were. How do you stage an intervention with someone about that? Even though you know that they are absolutely fueled with anxiety, they might stop attending social gatherings because they're obsessed with how they're going to eat, how the food's prepared, etc. It's very difficult to pinpoint, okay, I think actually there's a problem here. And people, especially these days, they're so good at masking. I see a lot of patients walk through the door. It's an example I often give. And sometimes I can be a bit envious, and they're so well presented. They've got this beautiful lipstick on, their hair's done, they've got their bag. Meanwhile, I feel like the disheveled mother that has just about managed to get out. And then when they sit down, they start to crumble. And that's when they will start to tell you, I'm having an issue with this. I can't let up on X. I feel like now I've presented myself looking so healthy. I've got good muscle definition. People associate me with that. I don't feel like I can ever enjoy myself properly. I feel a bit flat and empty. And it can be quite surprising even for myself. And I like to think I've got a decent read on people through sort of years as being a medic. Honestly, it can be so well hidden and masked. I think that's the issue.
Do you know, it's funny you say that. I feel like as an adult, I'm almost 40. I think I've got a pretty decent grip on how I can handle things and outside influence. But I do find myself sort of, let's say, for example, going on Instagram and you see all of these lovely accounts with these gorgeous people, and they talk about their day and the timestamps of their day and what they've eaten that day, and everything that they've eaten is perfect at the right time, which gives no leeway for life. And again, I'm going to just speak from experience. You said, you know, sort of having anxiety, being in a social setting, thinking, what time am I going to eat? I should be finished eating by 8. I don't want to have, you know, that little bite of a dessert at 10:30, which is just dinner time, you know, date night, dinner with your friends. And then you start to feel guilty about that. And this is me. I don't know if this is a sort of a borderline, but I have noticed that, especially as maybe I get a bit older, that I am more aware of what I am eating and the times that I'm eating. And I don't know if that's because obviously I'm seeing so much comparison, or is it the way that I should be looking at nutrition? I think that's my question.
There's nutrition is completely individual to every single human on this planet, you know, and what I have not necessarily a problem with, but more so, I think something that needs to be addressed. These conversations need to be had. That I think they're so important just to resonate with people. But I think mainstream media, when they blast something out on, you know, news, broadcast it, this study has said this. So many people will trust that source and take that information. And it could just be one study. It could just be one person who's done a qualification and has said, don't have this. All of a sudden, you've got millions of people that listen to it, don't have it all of a sudden. And there sparks a debate between, okay, is this information actually, you know, legit, or is this just someone spreading some news that's, you know, actually got no weight to it? And I think news on being broadcast by media, I just think it needs to be thought about a little bit more critically before it's then blasted out to the public. That's why these conversations, I think, need to be had more so. Just we get people that maybe have experienced it, a little bit more qualified in the field that can discuss and have a bit more of an open mind about, okay, nutrition is so individual to every single person. We can't just take a general statistic of, this food is bad for you and go apply that to everybody.
Absolutely.
We've got to really look at each person and go, okay, how, what's your activity levels like? Even allergies and stuff, and really construct an individual nutrition profile of someone and help them understand it, because people just don't understand nutrition. They don't understand it. So they'll look at these fads that have been made so public and they'll like the idea of it because, the no carb diet, for example, brilliant, no carbs. All of a sudden, someone goes on this no carb diet. They form a bad relationship with carbs. And then you have to try and rebuild a relationship with carbs over years and years of having none of it. And
it's a lot. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's definitely difficult.
It's also a spectrum. You said about sometimes you're sat in a restaurant and you're a bit aware. Awareness is fine.
Yeah.
And we encourage to be aware with eating, etc. It's at what point does it cause significant harm to you mentally? And I think that's where the line is. We talk about ADHD. Everyone's being diagnosed with adult ADHD these days. And the majority of us will be at some point on a spectrum, especially with social media.
Definitely.
And we've got no patience these days. We don't need patience. But where does it start to impact you negatively on a regular basis throughout your day? And I think that's the bit that's hard to define. And actually, it's quite hard to diagnose as well. As a medic, we don't have diagnostic criteria for that part just yet.
So just from your experience, what would be sort of early warning signs?
So usually the first and easiest one would be, are they binging occasionally? Because that means they're restricting so much that they're not able to sustain it. And at some point they'll say, when they have alcohol or they're at a point or they're overtired, somewhere where they have less control, they then completely go off the rails. So they'll be really good all week, but the weekend they go completely crazy. They've got to a point that it's unsustainable for them. And that's when they start to then massively increase their calories in a really hyperactive type of manner. So that would be number one. Number two is when they get almost stressed at the thoughts of, okay, there's a birthday cake, someone's birthday, and you say, would you like a piece? There's a difference between saying no, and then there's a difference between being almost quite frightened that the cake is there and, oh my God, no, absolutely no way. And it's like little tiny reads on somebody that you can just see. It's actually quite distressing for them. Maybe they want it, maybe they want to have a little tiny bit, but they don't know how to handle it. The other is obviously when their body fat gets so low, so actually physical manifestations. For men, their body fat can get very low, below 10% quite comfortably. For women, they then get other side effects such as lack of menstruation, their hair might start to fall, their skin might become exceptionally dry, they become increasingly cold. These are the typical signs you'd see with anorexia. But often with women that are lifting weights, that are generally being healthy, they're trying to focus on healthy foods, their body fat still gets so low that they then have those physical manifestations of anorexia nervosa.
Wow. So, my question is, the physical manifestation, is that not like the later parts of an eating disorder? Is there no possibility? I think you mentioned it, but to almost see red flags, early warning signs, and to kind of intervene at that point?
Yeah, they would be like the ones I mentioned when people seem particularly stressed about constructing a meal, totally rigid, not able to do anything outside what they've assigned for themselves ever. People might say, oh, I'll be really good with myself Monday, Tuesday, whatever. But on this night, I'll let myself go a little bit free, or I'll have a cheat meal. It's when they go completely. And like I say, what you'll find, and they'll typically tell you, is that I'm really good, but then I just go a bit crazy. And it's just that the fact that they're so rigid with themselves that they then can't sustain it. That's probably the first one, right, that I would say I notice.
Can I add another point to that? And it's not necessarily surrounding the food. And this is a personal experience of mine. My food was very good. Okay, I didn't eat enough, but my food was balanced. My parents didn't really see a problem with what I was eating. It was my activity levels. I was burning myself out so much in the gym, outside of the gym, that I was just burning my body out physically. That was the sign.
Mm.
The food was okay, but I lost so much weight and I was scared to introduce any more foods. I told myself what I was eating was fine. It wasn't enough. And that was a lack of knowledge. That was a lack of education. But at the same time, and I think down to that stress that you mentioned, a lot of people turn to nutrition because it's something that they can control.
Yeah.
When life or an event in someone's life happens where everything feels so totally out of control, the one thing, or one of the main things that they have absolute control over is what they put into their body. And that control then leads to a detrimental spiral if it gets too out of hand. So the experience I had, my personal experience with it, the warning signs, the red flags, I would cycle to college, but I wouldn't take the normal route. I'd take a 10-mile detour. But I'd do that in my own head. I'd be like, right, I'm going to take this detour today. There was no other justification for it. I wanted to do it. There's no reason for it. I could have taken the normal route. I wanted to take a 10-mile detour, just because it was there. And if I took the shorter one, I hadn't done enough. I hadn't done enough. So from my experience, the control of food was a lot. It was too much. But the biggest problem for me was my overactivity. And you can see this in other people as well, because they'll sit and fidget. They'll sit and fidget. They'll, in their spare time, they'll do like ab exercises. They'll do like little, I don't know, foot
Leg
exercises.
raises or something.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yeah.
And it's the energy expenditure that they're focused on. They're focused on burning calories. They're focused on burning, not necessarily what they eat. They might be okay with what they eat, but it's the other end of the spectrum as well.
Can I ask to sort of take you back a little bit? How old were you when you started to feel that you needed to push a little bit more?
Yeah, really good question. It was between 17 and 19. So 17, 18, 19. And everything was out of control. I'd failed my A-levels horrendously. And I genuinely thought I was going to be working in a supermarket for the rest of my life. And I had big aspirations. I think I've told you, I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to fly. And I needed certain academic grades. So failing my A-levels, suddenly this dream I had was, slipping from my grasp. And I needed to just get my head down and do the best I could to try and achieve it. And to do that, I isolated myself, got rid of my friends, pushed myself away, controlled my eating, just because I couldn't afford to let anything slip. I just couldn't afford. If I wanted this dream, I had to put 110% into it. I took full control of everything I could, had no social life, and just removed any distraction. And that control, whilst it was my comfort zone, I didn't realize the detrimental impacts it was having on the rest of my life or my life going forward after that. I was around 17, 18, 19. So from an early adolescence, young male's perspective, I feel like I can talk about this in a very open-minded way. And it was hard. You're at college, you're surrounded by people who really don't care what they look. Girls, women, at that age, they will do. And I think you can probably discuss more about that. But lads that age, really, they don't. Yeah. So I felt very on my own with that.
But it's really common. So Alex talks about having difficulties around sort of mid to later teens. And I think that's quite common for most people, because around that age, you stop looking for your parents for reassurance and you start looking at your peers and also wanting to be independent. That little bit more, I mean, we've got children, we talk about them fighting for their independence, but it becomes much more pronounced in that sort of age range. And that's why you'll find a lot of people even will start looking to alcohol addictions, drug addictions, but also eating disorders. You're talking to two people, we're telling you the story of how we interact with our clients, but both of us both had our own history with eating.
You say that about the drinking, the drugs and everything. One thing I remember saying to my parents, when they'd pick up on these red flags, they'd pick up on these early warning signs and they go, is everything okay? All of this. I'd snap, admittedly, and, I'll apologize to my parents. I'd recognize that. I'd snap. But I'd say, at least I'm not doing drugs.
I was just about to say that. Yeah. I find it's almost like the lesser of two evils. You would, as a teenager, you would probably sit there and think, well, no, I'm not doing drugs, I'm not drinking. But there is still an addiction or an illness that is brewing that needs intervention.
And often it can spiral. So you can manage it well for quite a while, but eventually not always, but eventually will often spiral to a point where we talked about how it then starts to interfere with activities of daily living. And the problem with eating disorders is they're quite lonely. People, if they suffer with anorexia, they isolate themselves to avoid social gatherings, whether it's food related, etc. And I used to always describe it as having a hard-lined exterior, but actually it's quite empty inside. And then you've got things like bulimia nervosa, where people are binging, or even just binge eating disorder alone, or binge eating with some sort of purging, whether it's vomiting or whether it's then stopping yourself eating for days on end or laxative abuse. The shame that goes with that is really pronounced. And again, that creates an isolation and a loneliness. Same for orthorexia, obsessive healthy eating disorder. And I think that's what's sad. So we do look at alcohol and drugs being so detrimental. But actually, if people are abusing laxatives, they're making themselves vomit on a daily basis. You can get heart arrhythmias, etc. You are looking at things that are also potentially dangerous, but maybe a slightly less short-term danger, more long-term danger. And also just very sad for someone to have to go through.
Absolutely. You touched on it. Did you have personal experience with an eating disorder?
I think most 90s girls had dabbled with a bit of eating disorders at some point or another. I did. I had quite a long struggle, say. So a little bit like Alex, 15, 16, started with quite mild anorexia, got progressively worse, got to the point where I then started really severely binge eating. Then added in some vomiting because I didn't like the weight changes that came with it. And it got to the point that it really did take over my life. And I think we both discussed on the way actually to the podcast how in some way I think it's always there within you. It's about learning other coping strategies. And I think for a lot of people, they see eating disorders as a way that you can control things without burdening others. Because you just get on with it in your own right.
The silence with it.
Which you said perfectly during the intro. And it's a very silent disorder. And I think Alex's experience is a really great one to echo the comments of the whole show today, which is about the obsessiveness of trying to be healthy and look the part and burn calories. And perhaps people might not have noticed that as much as they might have noticed mine, for instance. And it's the silence in that that's really quite terrifying, whether it's you're a mother or whether you're a friend or just like a family member of somebody that you really care about.
Did you guys get to the point where, you said to yourself, enough is enough?
I remember the day. It's quite profound in my mind, actually. And I'd started to notice things were not right because I was snappy. I had a very, very short temper. I would never socialize. And it got to the point, I'm 5'11". At the moment, I weigh 85 kilos or so. That's a healthy weight for me to be. And around about, again, 18, 19, I stood on the scales and it said 59 kilos, which is 130 pounds or so.
My goodness.
And it was it ticked under the 60. And I was like, okay, that's enough. And from that day on, literally that moment onwards, it was project, I've got to get myself out of this. What I regret doing, in all honesty, is not seeking help. I'm proud of myself that I did it all myself because it's been a huge journey of trial and error. But through that trial and error, I've learned so much about nutrition, what you need, how to fuel your body, and all of this. But from that day onwards, it was a case of I need to get myself out of this. I don't look good. I don't feel good. I'm low on energy. I haven't got a social life. What quality of life is this now? It's quite profound that I remember that day like that. It's just...
So you all know by now that I am clearly obsessed with Wear That Now and the incredible team who put outfit after outfit that you see in all these episodes. And for those of you who don't know how Wear That Now works, give me a few moments of your time to explain it. So if you head over to their Instagram account, which is at wear.that.now, click the link in their bio and fill out their style survey, you almost immediately get connected with your very own personal stylist who will then go off and curate a bespoke box of outfits to fit your budget, your occasion, your style. and whatever requirement that you may need. That box will then get sent straight to your doorstep for you to try the clothes in the comfort of your own home. The outfits that you love, you keep, and the ones that you don't, you simply return. It's as easy as that. So if you're anything like me and you've got occasions coming up throughout the year, and the idea of going to a busy mall, especially when you've got little children around, gives you anxiety, then I urge you, head over to @where.that.now and start shopping from literally the comfort of your own home. Like you said, it's wonderful that you had that sort of drive and motivation to make a change, but not a lot of people do. And it's that point where you need help. You need help and support. You know, it's something that, just like anything we go through in life, there are always people that are going to be able to sort of catch you at that point. So I think that message, the fact that you feel, it would have been sort of a little bit of a regret not getting help, I think that's really important to sort of drive home, because not a lot of people can just say, no, that's it, that's enough.
I want to just express about the help point from, again, a young male's perspective. Yeah. It's hard for males to ask for help.
Definitely.
It really, really is.
So
and
true.
I have regrets, but I'm 27 now. That was 10 years ago. Looking back, I should have done it. But if I put myself in those shoes again, I probably wouldn't ask for help. And that's just from I'm a man, I can do this for myself. Yeah. I don't need anyone to help me perspective. But I implore anyone who feels like they know they need to make a change. I don't care whether you're female, male, whatever. Just get some support, even if it's just someone to talk to. Just so you can offload. My plan is to do this. What do you think?
But it's even things like this, conversations like this. If there is somebody listening and thinking to themselves, okay, I've heard this conversation, real life sort of experiences of this may be something that I'm going through, and it might sort of push the person who is listening to either access help or just have a little bit of a reevaluation as to what's going on.
I think people don't always know where to start.
That's it. That's the hardest
point.
So
it's like you might know in your brain something's firing too regularly or obsessing you or worrying you, whatever. And it could be anorexia, as we were just talking about, for instance, or it could be even just obsession about being healthy.
Well, so that you mentioned the term
orthorexia.
And that's this whole clean eating and making sure that you're living this super, that everything that you're putting into your body is just
going to be perfect for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing is that there's two schools of thought on this. One is, if you naturally have a slightly addictive behavior or personality, wouldn't you rather be addicted to something that's good for you? So like some people that give up alcohol, they suddenly start cycling. I don't know why. It's alcohol and cycling, but it's very frequently alcohol, or alcoholics will often go into cycling. And they say, well, how great is that? Because then they start to cycle.
As in on a bike?
On a bike, yeah, go
That's
cycling.
So funny.
It's a really, really common story that I hear from my clients or my clients' friends and family members. And that's great. However, when the cycling starts to impact the family life, they need to cycle quickly before they go to bed, even though they're exhausted. Similar to Alex's story, that's when it starts to become a problem. So I would say, if there is something that's bothering you and you just don't know where to start, just go and have a chat with your doctor. They can't tell anyone, and they're not necessarily going to prescribe you anything. You don't have to do what they say. It's just a conversation. That's it. Get the information. I always say, you don't have to do anything now. Sit with it. Sit with that knowledge of what you could do, and then decide in your own time. No one could have forced Alex to seek help before he did. Same for myself, and same for everybody that you meet. Like, you have to let somebody come to that decision in their own time. Little push, little nudge in the right direction, but then ultimately it is up to them.
Absolutely.
The first step is the recognition. If someone recognizes they need to change, brilliant, perfect. Don't push somebody to go too quickly. The fact they've recognized it is such a massive step, especially when we're talking about this topic. It's so huge. So if someone comes to you and they say, look, this is happening, whatever, just be proud of them for the fact that they've gone, I think something's up, and then be there for them, support them.
What if it's a little bit on, sort of on the other side, let's say, for example, you have noticed that in somebody that you love and care about.
Mhm.
Is there a point where you, as a person, not them, could you be intervening? And if you do, I mean, is that the right way to intervene? Or should you, I guess, put them in touch with somebody a bit more qualified?
I think you have to plant the seed with people and say, look, I've recognized this from a totally non-judgmental way. I'm concerned, like express your concerns. This is what I think maybe you should do. But you can't force anyone unless it gets to the point that it's life-threatening.
That's right.
And you're looking at having a psychiatrist, etc., to come in and actually sort of force them to go off to hospital. All you can do is advise. Alex said before, so much of eating disorders, whatever it is and however far it is on the spectrum, is about control. If you try and take control from somebody and force them to do something, it's almost like you're backing them into a corner and making it worse. So that's why I say they're an adult, and if they're in their teenage years, speak to them like they're responsible, speak to them like they have autonomy of themselves, and just encourage, tell them their concerns. I really think you should do this for this reason. And again, let them sit with it for a little while rather than forcing them to go, even if you are worried. Again, if it gets to the point that you have serious concerns over their health and safety, it's a different story altogether.
Absolutely. I think it's we live in a culture. I mean, again, I'm a mom of two. There's this hyperfixation on this sort of, it's a bounce back culture. How fast could I come back from pregnancy, back to my absolutely pretending as though I didn't have a baby? I don't think that helps. And I don't think that anyone's immune to having some sort of fixation on healthy eating or really intense exercises, because yes, of course, the younger sort of adolescents and teenagers are a little bit more susceptible. But again, I find that we have put so much emphasis on this ability to kind of look a certain way and to feel a certain way that I feel like we've lost the way almost. And especially, again, I'm only talking from experience. I do remember thinking that, okay, I've just had this baby, when do you think I'll get back into my jeans? And that's not the concern. It should be let your body naturally heal and go through it. But it's a sad, sad fact.
It's like Alex said before, it's about social media.
Absolutely.
I did a blog years ago called Anorexia to Armkel, and it was comparing the obsessions with anorexia to the obsessions with healthy eating, looking good, looking like you've got this great physique, whether it's before or after pregnancy. And the point is that they're not dissimilar. When you look at somebody that has bounced back from pregnancy really quickly, you feel like I should.
Yes.
But the reality is people are presented in a certain way. It might be a little bit longer after they had the baby. They might have had help, especially if it's a celebrity. They might have had medications. I'm not saying that is right. And that's a whole other topic of people abusing medications to lose weight. They're photographed in particular lighting. They are photographed when potentially they're dehydrated, so they look slimmer. So what we see and we're comparing ourselves against are totally not true comparisons. And I love those people that go out and they say, this is me now, this is me when I relax my stomach, this is me in a different lighting. And I think good on you for doing it, because you can see how what we see on social media is totally incorrect and so unfair for a new mum that's got the pressures of trying to breastfeed, trying to stop everything falling out of their body, and just trying to juggle life with a newborn, also trying to look perfect and comparing themselves to people that you cannot compare yourself to.
Absolutely.
You must experience that a lot though, surely.
100%.
In the gym. Yeah.
100%. I mean, I sort of remember the day where I decided I was going to, really focus on working on myself as well. And it was actually seeing a front cover of a Men's Health magazine. It was actually seeing a front cover. And everybody always says, they're Photoshop, they're airbrush, they're all this kind of stuff. Something in me, and I remember the conversation, again, I was in the supermarket, I had a conversation with myself and I said, but what if that is possible?
Yeah.
What if that is possible to achieve? There you go. And that sparked that, okay, clean up the eating, as well as the control over everything else. It was a case of, I want to try and look like that. Everything else is going to pot. Let's control everything and do the best I can. And obviously the social media, it's a constant highlight reel. And I know everybody says
it really
that.
is.
It is a constant highlight reel. Social media is brilliant if you use it in the right way. But I think it's so important that people need to cultivate their feed in a way that benefits them. And the more time you spend looking at someone who looks perfect, the more times you're going to see perfect people pop up in your feed. So I'm not saying...
And it's going to highlight your own natural imperfections that are beautiful and that make you who you are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that is what, honestly, it really irritates me to no end, because the amount of filters and body augmented things that you could do. A friend of mine was showing me. It's really bizarre. You could completely look up like a complete different human being.
Yeah.
And that is what's being seen to young girls, to moms who've just had a baby, to young men and boys. That's not reality. I feel like it should have, I don't know, they should sign a waiver or something against this type of, because it is really destructive.
Yeah,
But
especially...
it's a business, isn't it?
It is. It's a business. And also, say you wanted to do photographs to get clients in.
Yep.
Alex would present himself at his leanest.
Absolutely.
Or in again, the perfect lighting when he's at a body weight that he couldn't sustain. And that's what a lot of physique men and women do. So when you see them on stage or on their photographs, they're at an unsustainable physique. Majority of them, not all of them. Some people are lucky and they can stay that way all year round, but commonly they have a particular weight. It's like fighters. They have a fighting weight and they have a walking around weight. But yet all the images, all the photographs are taken at that one particular time.
Of course.
So like you say, you're looking at it and saying, this is how I should be. This is, why do I look like this? They might not look dissimilar in between those photo shoots.
There's so much more. And again, back to the conversation about your point where you said, everybody's looking at these social media posts and then thinking that they should look like that as well. That was me with that magazine cover. There was no disclaimer. There was nothing there. It was a case of, there was a man stood there with 2 dumbbells in his hand, ripped abs. Is that possible to look like that? Let's give it a go. And there you go. And that's all it was. But it was the influence from that magazine. Whatever editing had gone on, I couldn't see. I just saw a human stood there that looked perfect.
But you were also, 17?
Yeah.
I mean, that's very young. What do they say? Something like your frontal lobe or cortex or whatever. It's not even nowhere near developed as a mature adult.
Yeah.
But that's what's really frightening. And the funny thing is that, like, obviously we've talked about our own trouble. And then we alluded to the fact that we're both parents. Yeah. Now, the desire to wrap my children up in cotton wool and accept themselves is so strong. And especially when I see certain patients coming through and I see the struggles that they go through. And it's like, how can I prevent my children thinking that's right? And I always talk about looking good inside and being healthy. And we never talk about weight per se. We talk about eating for performance, eating for making sure that they can do all their exercises and do their karate class and stuff like that. And the focus is on health. And only time will tell whether that pays off, because obviously there's only the influence at home. There's all this influence from school. And then my boys are 7 and they already start talking about being fat and can you see my abs? And it really upsets
my son was
me.
Telling me, he sort of flexed his, do you like my biceps and my abs? I was like, yes, but let's not fixate on that.
Yeah. But it's very hard because you're only one source of what it is that they're getting on a daily basis.
I think you raised a good point just briefly on the nutrition for performance. And that is where my mindset has changed massively with nutrition. When I looked at that magazine cover, I wanted to eat to look good. Now, my perception on food has changed. I want to eat so I can perform my best. The byproduct of performing at my best is I get to look good as well. Yeah. All right. And I think that's where people need to kind of look at nutrition. It's like, look at nutrition as the fuel. You fuel your car up. The more fuel you put in it, the further you can go, the better it performs. The more you fuel yourself with the right things, the better you perform, the better you can look, etc. Don't fixate on how you look. Fixate on what you are doing, how well you're performing. There's nothing wrong with being obsessive with, I'm going to go and set a PB in the gym. I'm going to go and do my PB 5K run, for example, as long as you control it and don't get way too obsessive about it. But that fuel yourself for that. And the byproduct of that is, you'll be a fit, healthy human.
I totally agree. I think it's it's to be, I mean, not even just, obviously you want to perform and, you know, you want to be able to be active in your life, but I think it's also, again, you guys work in the longevity space. I think it's also to have consistently good health, well, you know, sort of you know, as you age. And I think that should be, I mean, of course, if you look good while doing it, that's a bonus. But if you have sort of sidestepped chronic illness and sidestepped, you know, some other illness, that is the focus, to kind of avoid being on long-term medication, for example, or to avoid having mobility issues or things like that.
It's like you said about longevity. Sustainability is longevity.
Yeah.
So we play quite a lot with in longevity with repurposing of medications, utilizing. I talk a lot about peptides. Ozempic being a peptide, which people often
I was
don't
going to ask you
appreciate.
about Ozempic.
Yeah, and other medications that might be able to help keep you going. If you abuse anything in the short term, you will not reap the awards long term. And that's why everything that we do at ZOIME or otherwise with any of our clients, it's all about sustainability. And as a byproduct of that is longevity.
Yeah. Before we move on, I've got some questions on longevity and sustainability and Zoe and what you guys do there. But I wanted to quickly ask you both opinions. Do you think there is a rise? I mean, do you think eating disorders are gender specific or they're almost on equal footing?
Apologies, there's no sort of shout outs allowed,
No.
but a very, very, very close friend of mine who also suffered eating disorder took part in she has a section in a book, and that book's title is called Eating Disorders Do Not Discriminate. And that title says it all. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you do. It does not discriminate. It just does not discriminate. Men, women, anybody. You know, it can destroy the lives of anybody.
Anyone.
Yeah.
I think it's just changed.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
You know, we said at the beginning.
I think that I feel the statistics show that more women and girls kind of suffer from eating disorders, but I also think on the other hand, not a lot of boys and men come forward with sort of putting that down as part of a statistic. So I think that's where there's a bit of a discrepancy, but that could be my opinion only.
No, I totally agree. And I think as well, what doesn't come under the umbrella of necessarily eating disorders is things like Alex said about trying to over consume calories. And also I get a lot of gentlemen that are really body conscious, gym kind of rats, as it were, coming in and they're abusing medications that will help them lose weight. And that it's not in the typical sense of an eating disorder, but it all goes hand in hand together. So I think it's just changed.
It has changed. And that's the thing. Obviously, we have 2 little boys. And I always it's always in the back of my mind, because I do find now more than ever, boys and men are struggling a little bit across the board. And I just obviously, you know, when I was reading through statistics about eating disorders, it did say that the incidences of boys and men with eating disorders almost doubled in the past 15 years.
I think it's the gym culture. Like we're so lucky that the gym culture is taken off and people are really aware of their fitness. And I say, you know, rather than going out for a night out these days, people are quite happy to just go meet in the gym. And how wonderful is that we're bringing fitness into our social circle and social life. But the downside is that people are then conscious of, well, how do I look compared to this person? And I think gentlemen do sometimes bear the brunt. There's a bit more of a movement of strong women coming forward, and with strength sometimes you might get a little bit more adipose tissue and whatever, and it's embraced a little bit more. But for men it is about that being lean and showing muscular definition, and I said that men can quite comfortably sit at lower body fats than women, so it's almost like, well, why don't they? And they should. And I also likewise with my little men worry about that a whole lot.
There's a lot of young lads get into the gym and they get obsessive about the way they look because they want abs to attract the girls. You hear it so often. Why do you want abs? Girls love abs. All of the kind
It's
of stuff.
true.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, I mean, my husband does it to me. Like, he'll go to the gym, how do I look? I'm like, you look great.
Yeah.
But again, it's cute in saying that obviously now, but it can be quite detrimental down the
If
line.
they take it too seriously,
Yes.
it can be.
But it's hard. We're talking about this. Where do you draw the line? Because at the same time, a lot
This
of
is
what
honestly, that is like the $1 million question. Where do you draw the line? We are, I mean, getting to the point where we've become so hyper fixated on everything, every aspect of it. Don't eat sugar, that's going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't, you have to lift more weights because it needs to be, you need that. Then intermittent fasting, and you have to, it's just, my goodness, it's exhausting.
I think as long as what you're doing serves you, and like Alex said, it fuels performance, it's sustainable, and you're generally quite happy and comfortable, content in what you're doing, it's probably the right thing.
Yeah.
If it feels like more stress than you're getting back from it, if it feels like you're becoming a bit obsessive and it's unsustainable, if you couldn't imagine yourself doing it in 12 months' time, then perhaps that's where the line is, and you might need to take just one step back. I say often to patients, you have to, if you eat like a rabbit today, you won't be doing it in 12 months' time. Your bloods will look great in 3 months, but in 12 months, they'll go back to where they are now. You have to implement healthy habits that as a human and knowing yourself, that you can sustain.
I totally agree. It's a lot easier said than done. That's for sure. I mean, that's why you guys are here.
When I train with clients, my number one goal for them is to educate them so that they no longer need a coach.
To be honest, I can attest to that.
If a client came to me and said, Alex, look, I'm very sorry, we're going to have to part ways. I don't actually feel like I need you anymore. I know what I'm doing in the gym. I know how to control my nutrition. I eat really well. I'm healthy. I'm happy. Job done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Job done. And that's not telling people you've got to eat really strict. You've got to eat really healthy. It's about having balance. If you want to go out on the weekend, if you want to go out with friends, have a bit of fun, fine. How you then get back on the rails and just manage it, in the next couple of days following it, it's all about balance. You can have that little bit of control of your nutrition to fuel your performance. But then if you want to go out, have the ability to go out, have that flexibility around it.
Do you think that what would you say to your client if you want the conversation to shift to well-being? Is that what you would
100%.
that's the overarching message?
Yeah. It's not, as you said about, these guys on stage and they get ripped. I'm not training people to go on a stage, and get shredded. I'm not doing that. I'm training people for longevity. And longevity means healthy habits that they have for the rest of their lives, that help them live longer, happier, and more fruitfully just throughout life. And that comes down to the education. That's how you teach people. So I teach people about the macros, about what a balanced diet is, your basal metabolic rate, your total daily energy expenditure, how to calculate it, and when they get to a point whereby they know how to do that, if something changes, they know how to recalculate so they can get the right nutrition in, then job done for me. And it's that proper education. And I think that's what's not necessarily missing. I think there's too much information. I think nutrition has been so overcomplicated. This is bad for you. That's bad for you. But some of this is good for you. And some of this is good for you.
You are lost.
Completely and utterly lost. Going back, I don't know how long, eggs were bad for you. Now eggs are the best thing you can have.
Absolutely.
And this misinformation that's going about, nutrition, it needs to be made simpler. And I'll go back to the whole broadcasting thing. Broadcasters will come out with everything to sell a story. They will do. And regardless of what that, what the impact of that is, they will try and sell a story. And the way people digest it can be there's millions of ways people can digest this information. And then it gets overcomplicated. And then you get all these fads, and then you get misinformation. Then you get people on social media who have big followings saying,
this is what I've done and it's worked for me, and look at the transformation, and I feel great and I look great, and the camera turns off and you have no idea what happened in the background.
Boom. Yeah, there you go. You've just started a domino effect.
That's the thing as well. They say what suits me, and one size doesn't fit all.
No.
you know, there are some people that do really well on actually quite a high carbohydrate diet, as long as the protein's there. And then there are other people that don't do so well. Maybe they have really high insulin resistance. They feel puffy or inflamed when they're eating a lot of carbohydrates. So the point is, you have to find what suits you, what makes you feel better. What you said at the very beginning, what gets us up in the morning, what fuels you to get up in the morning. So you can't just say, you can't listen to somebody on social media saying, don't do this, do this. You have to listen to yourself and your own body and what it tells you.
No, absolutely. And I think that just keep repeating it, that you have to listen to yourself.
Yes.
You have to do what works for you and what's right for you, because that other person may react completely different to the way that you're reacting to something.
To that there's to find the things that work for you takes a lot of trial and error.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a whole lifetime.
Yeah. and that's scary. That's very, very scary for someone who has recognized that they've got something and they're trying to fix it. Adding things that they've previously been terrified about eating, adding that into their diet to see if it maybe makes them feel a little bit better is absolutely terrifying. That's the way I did it. And it took me a good 5-6 years to be able to, I really intuitively now, I will, you know, if I fancied a pizza tonight, I'll go and have a pizza, you know, but I know how to manage it. So tomorrow I'll have something a little bit better and whatever. But,
and that's not to say eat rubbish. It's, you know, eating healthy and good quality food is always going to be the number one choice. You know, not to sort of bash anybody, but to go and grab a Big Mac, yes, it can be done, but you know the harmful effects of ultra processed food and things like that. So, you know, it's that end of the spectrum also you want to avoid, but it's just kind of keeping this.
It's about finding your cues to bounce yourself back in each direction, isn't it? And that's it. I always say to people, look, if you've had something that you know wasn't ideal, don't beat yourself up about it. You've done it now, and just keep that as your treat, like every now and again. And it's about sort of not being so rigid, but having the healthy mindset that's not obsessive. And we said before, where's that line? It's so hard to find, and I think only you can find it as well. But you know, I always say patients come to me to talk about food, and I'm like, everyone knows deep down exactly what they should and shouldn't be having. And we all know when we've had too much of something that's maybe not been great for us.
That's so true. I feel both of you focus so much on mindset. On mindset from your end, Alex. You focus so much on mindset in sort of physical sort of fitness and nutrition. You, Dr. Jenna, obviously you focus so much on mindset overall, on how you sort of treat patients moving forward when they leave your office. Why do you guys really sort of push that agenda?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
I'll go first. Mindset's everything. It really, really is. Your mind is just your most powerful tool. If you use your mind constructively, you can achieve absolutely anything you want to. But the moment you let your mind take control over you, it's where things start getting bad. And our mind is everything. It's what gives us consciousness. It is absolutely everything. You know, there is nothing else in the world that is governing us apart from our mind. And it's trying to really get people to recognize that if you can master this and really have full control over your thought processes about the decisions you make, you can master absolutely anything. So whether that's your fitness, your goals, your nutrition, if you can think about stuff and have that mindset to just think laterally about what are you doing, think constructively, use your mind with you to help you progress to whatever goals you want to achieve. There's so much I could go into about mindset. There's so much I could go into.
But I feel you've integrated that. I feel when you are seeing clients that this is a huge component of it.
100%. Yeah. It's all of it. It's all of it. Mindset's massive. You know, you set yourself a goal. It takes discipline, perseverance, bit of persistence. It's not easy, but being able to have that chat with yourself within you and go, okay, this isn't ideal now, but I know it's going to take me somewhere that I want to be. And mindset is such a huge topic. I could do like an entire episode about mindset. Trying to make it concise into one little section is hard, but trying to just teach people about the power that the mind has to help you succeed is vastly important. I just want people to recognize it. I just want people to go, do you know what? I can do this. It's going to take a lot of hard work, but that positive self-talk, that positive reinforcement, you can do this, keep going, don't stop. It's okay. You're doing well. You're doing good. And I'll tell people as well, people who come to me and say, oh, I don't know what's going on. You know, I'm confused. I'm this. You're doing good. You're doing okay. Keep going. You know, and it's just having that positivity to reinforce somebody that they are doing okay. Keep pushing forward.
I think I get a daily WhatsApp message from Alex saying, you know what, Jenna, you're doing really well. Hang in. It's going great. It's like very motivational.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
To be honest, that's what we need.
Yeah, everyone needs an Alex.
It's true, but it's...
Do you know what? I had this from my mum, and big shout out to my mum. You know, I love her to bits.
We love that.
and she, I've struggled a lot with like so many different things, and there was a message she sent me once, and she just said, "You're doing good." That was it. That's all it took. And again, I can go a lot into mental health with this, and especially men's mental health. You know, when they don't.
Good one. We need to do another one on that. 100%.
Men don't necessarily want the solutions to stuff. They just want someone to feel proud of them.
Yeah.
That's all they want. It's like, I've got these struggles. I'm fighting them. I'm fighting my demons. Just tell me I'm doing good and I'm doing okay. I'm good.
We're proud of you, Alex.
We really are, but you're making me emotional.
You don't know how hard that hits.
Stuck on eyelashes.
But shout out to my dad as well. I love my dad to bits. That wasn't just mum, you know, but my parents, they've done an awful lot for me.
But it's that support, isn't it? It's 100%. The support and the showing up for you and noticing.
Yeah.
You know, when somebody's noticed your hard work, whether it's good or bad, that person's, you know, I got you. I can see you. You know, the acknowledgement that, you know, we are right there with you.
Don't beat people down. You know, don't beat people down. If you see someone struggling and they're not quite doing something wrong or they're making mistakes, there's probably something else going on.
Yeah.
You know,
Patience.
Don't beat them down. Don't shoot them, whatever. What's up? You're doing a good job. Keep going. If I can help, tell me what I can do.
Even if it's just, I'm here, you know,
exactly.
I'm just here. You can do whatever you want. I'm just going to hang around you for a little while.
Exactly.
If you need me, I'll be in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice to be supported. Even if you do those workout videos and they're generic to everyone, they're like, you're doing a good job. It's like, thanks.
Well, do you know, obviously, you know, if I was to train with Alex, there's so much positivity and so much sort of motivation for me to push that extra harder. If I was to do it myself, I'm like, oh, who's around? Can I get somebody to tell me I'm doing a good job? Yeah.
It's about the feeling. You know, I said at the beginning, I introduced myself as my tagline, look well, feel well, be well. Ultimately, the most important part is the feeling well. Yeah. It's the feeling. Yeah. And if you are supported, your mindset is in the right place, you're intuitive with what it is that you're doing, and you're listening to yourself, then you will feel well. And I think that really is the most important out of the three.
Do you think that is how you would define self-love?
Feeling well? Yeah. I think it's listening to those voices inside your own head, and not even up here. Sometimes, like, sounds a little bit hippie, doesn't it? But sometimes here, we all of us have got an intuition and gut feelings about things. And I think all animals have it, and they listen to it. And as humans, we start to use that frontal cortex too much. And if we just listen to what we really need and what really our body's calling for, and now I'm really sounding hippie, I think actually then we will just generally feel better and I don't know, be just generally in a bit better place. And so I do encourage a lot of patients to say, I reflect back, and in fact it's actually what a lot of therapists do. What do you think you need? And everyone has the answer. Everyone always has the answer. It's just they get clouded by all the thoughts, feelings, and external distractions.
How would you define self-love,
Alex?
Alex?
Very tricky one. I find it hard to answer only because I found it hard to tell myself. Self-love, give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. Like the amount of times I tell you, I cycled 10 miles to college when I didn't need to. Why did I do that? You know, and that was me punishing myself. And I recognize now all of the 3 hours I spent in the gym, 7 days a week, cycling 10 miles to college, all of this, it was a form of self-harm. All right. So for me, the self-love is, I don't need to cycle that 10 miles. I can just cycle the normal way to go to college. Just take a break, be easy on yourself. Your body works 24/7. It is constantly on the go. It needs the rest. You need sleep. Rest is productive for your performance, for everything, your mental cognition. It's a fundamental part of living a healthy lifestyle. Rest. Give yourself a break.
How can you define optimal nutrition? I feel like these are rapid fire questions.
It's a really, really difficult one, isn't it? I'd go back to sustainability.
Not so much optimal nutrition, optimal health.
Okay.
How would you, if you were to explain, or your end goal to reach optimal health, what would that be?
I think first of all, you have to say that optimal health for everyone is different. Like we sort of touched on before, everyone's got a different formula that works. But ultimately, it's about how you're moving, making sure you're moving regularly. I've talked to you a few times about the joy of resistance training and how that just makes you perform optimally in almost all aspects of life if you do engage with some resistance.
I have to add that we've only been sort of training together for 2 months, 2 months?
Yeah,
about 2 months. I honest to God feel good.
Yeah.
And I do have a little bit more energy despite the fact I've got 2 little boys, but I have noticed wonderful things that come from it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. But that's the point, is that like resistance training is such a huge part of movement. Trying to get a variety of foods in and hitting protein goals. I would say as well, trying to utilize stress relieving activities, trying to do a job in whatever way that pays the bills but is true to you and something that you really want to do and follows your own dreams, because that's a huge part of taking control for yourself, and a huge part of being happy. And then the only other thing as well is, if you're looking at how to optimize health, it's then what nice little cheeky add-ons can you engage with, and that would be where you come and see people like us to help just take you that 1% higher. But the fundamentals are the fundamentals.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Optimal health is so individual to each and every person, and for me, my optimal health, as long as I live happy, healthy, active lifestyle, I have a family that I can look after, and I get to an older age and I can still move, I can still do stuff, I can still go out, I can still go and have fun. That is just health to me. It's like again, a massive topic, such a huge topic, but so individual to what everybody wants out of life, really. So many people want different things out of life. And I just don't think there's one way to put it. I really don't. I think
also another little thing that needs to be added is community, to be a part of a community,
Massively.
to be able to have these social connections and interactions. And I mean, I think we've all seen the Blue Zone documentaries and all of these. I think
the villages.
The village. Yeah. And they are, once you sort of dissect and have a look at their lives, they are all fairly active. They do eat pretty healthy, sort of a balanced diet, whatever that may consist of. And they're surrounded by people to lean on. And I think that is a huge aspect of it as well.
People to build them up as well.
Yeah.
And again, we go back to that whole reinforcement. It's not necessarily just people to lean on, but people that are there for you. Keep going. You can do it.
In terms of, obviously, we're having a conversation about all sorts of topics, whether it's eating disorders, optimal health and nutrition, and the landscape is changing slightly. From your sort of experience and personal outlook, where do you want these conversations to go? What did you want them to look like, let's say 5 years down the line?
Can I just interject in the sense that we talk about optimal health and then we talk about orthorexia and obsessive characteristics that come with eating and sort of health. In order to gain optimal health, you might find that actually that's where the obsessions come in. So for me, it's to say this is optimal health. And if that's what you want from life and you want to be that obsessed and you want to maybe cut out a bit of the social or the community aspect in order to achieve it, in order to be in bed on time, to eat perfectly, that's your decision. But what we're trying to, I think, today is to encourage to say, look, actually taking one step down from that, but to also recognize the benefits of social interactions, community, having that odd little treat here and there, that actually that can be optimal in its own little way. So I think there's a scientific way of having optimal health. But for me, I would like the conversation to go more, I said I'm a 360-degree type medic, to more of a holistic type of optimal health. That's how I would like to see things going forward in the future.
Live life abundantly. Have an abundance of everything. Life, health, people around you, just a balance of all things that are good for you.
Balance, Alex. That's it. You can't have everything in life. You can't be an elite athlete and still have the same sort of social nightlife, etc.
The rest of us.
Yeah, because unless you've got children and you're in bed actually at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
But the reality is you can't have everything. So I think Alex has just said that perfectly. It's about the balance. And that's for me is, I think, health.
Do you know, I'm always so careful about the word balance. I find balance is such a double-edged sword. Yes, you need it and you need it. But then to be, again, hyperfixated on, did I have the right balance here?
Yeah.
And I think more so, I have to say, it's for me, the obsession with balance and balancing things is more children and life. But I get what you're saying, that you need to be able to have some sort of give and take in a situation, especially around health and fitness and nutrition. But it's quite difficult.
It's a complex thing that we're trying to address actually today, because we're saying about making sure we're not obsessive, but still ticking the boxes, but don't tick the boxes too strongly.
Yeah, that's it.
And so it is, and it's about sort of being kind to yourself while still trying your best to eat well, live well, and move.
This is why I try and teach my clients and educate them, because where at the point I'm at now, I used to control my eating. I used to count everything. I eat so intuitively now. I know roughly how much I've got on my plate of each macronutrient.
Before you go on, what do you mean eat
intuitively?
Intuitively. So I don't track anything. I don't, plan necessarily what I eat. I don't, I just, what do I fancy having today? Do I fancy having, some chicken, beef, whatever, and if I decide to go for that, okay, I'll have lots of protein. Protein's good for you. I don't personally think protein is, it needs to be more important in people's nutritional habits. I think people's nutritional habits are quite carb heavy at the moment. Protein needs to be made a little bit more important. But I roughly know how much protein I need, how many carbs I need, how many fats I need per meal per day. But that's only come from the trial and error, through the education, through that long journey of, weighing this out, prepping this and all this kind of stuff. So for me, educating my clients to say, okay, this is what nutrition is about. It's about proteins, carbohydrates, fats. I need you to understand that there's 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates and protein and 9 calories per gram of fat. And then over time,
I wouldn't be able to follow it.
Over time, people get used to the numbers, people understand it, and then you will see a plate of food in front of you and you won't look at that as whatever's on the plate. You will look at that as macronutrients. You go, okay, that's got roughly about this many macros in it. That's got this many macros in it. And you can balance it. You can tweak, you can chop and change. So I can go out for a meal today. Doesn't matter what's on the plate. I'll go, okay, fine, I'll eat it. I'll enjoy it. But then I know, okay, I've had that earlier on. So when I go home, I know how to balance it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that intuition to just go, okay, well, I had this earlier, and having that flexibility to be able to go out and enjoy what you have. But then when you're in a position where you can control what you eat, then you manage it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so important to educate people properly on nutrition rather than listen to necessarily mainstream media and articles on the internet.
But you also have to look at the person, because, and I keep saying, I think this is like the 4th time I said that today, everyone's on their own little journey.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, the first conversation will be, let's just look at whole foods. I used to make these, I don't know if you ever saw one, ridiculous videos for children. It was like for really young children about healthcare. And I used to say, if you don't have to take it out of a packet and you have to wash it, then it's probably good for you. Because the idea is, it's like it might be in the first instance, they're not even anywhere near what Alex is talking about. It might just be trying to encourage them to eat more whole foods that have got lots of lovely nutrients and minerals in that will help feed the body, as opposed to being chemicals, etc., that the body doesn't really know what to do with and might cause some inflammation. So it might be a stepwise process. So for somebody that might hear what Alex has just said and be a bit overwhelmed, oh my goodness, I have no idea what to do there. There is a journey to go on, and the first step might be something really, really very simple.
Totally.
That was like the sort of, to wrap up the discussion, just for the person who is listening on their own personal health journey, and you know, the way that they have an idea of their own sort of body image, what would be something that you would say to them?
I would say have patience. Don't try and achieve everything overnight. I normally, with each client, will give them little micro targets per month, and we'll just work on those, and they'll be completely sustainable and something that they might not notice so much. But then if you project over the period of a year, 2 years, and they keep making those little micro targets, actually, when you look back, you've made huge amounts of change. The other is, sometimes when we're in our own head talking to ourselves, we can sometimes struggle a little bit. And people will think, well, why do I need to go to the doctor? Or why do I need to go and see a health coach? Or whoever it may be that you trust, why do you need to go? Theoretically, you don't, because most people know what they've got to do. But there is something about someone unpacking all what's in your mind and making you like a stepwise program to follow that just helps. It might be that you only need to go once, and then you've kind of figured out how to unpack it and how to put it down and make your journey. That would be my advice, I suppose.
That's really good advice. Alex?
I want to address the people that maybe don't want to speak out, too shy to speak out, too ashamed to speak out. And if people are feeling so consumed and asphyxiated with whatever's going on, maybe so much so that they can't even describe what's going on, they lack the vocabulary to really articulate what they're feeling, give yourself a break. Give yourself time to breathe. Okay? You're doing okay. That's all I'm going to say. Reach out to people that are going to support you.
I love that. Honestly, I feel this conversation is very much needed. And like we said at the beginning, it's only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much to it. It's quite complex. And I feel more than anything, especially at this point in time, it has become sort of very much intertwined. So the work that you do with your clients, with your families, with yourselves is really very important. And thank you so much for sharing your stories. And I think it's really necessary that you keep doing exactly that, amplify the message that you guys are trying to sort of put out into the world, because I think, again, now more than ever, it's so absolutely needed. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you for
Jenna,
having
Alex,
us.
thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you.